So I read through Heidegger's two essays on building, dwelling, thinking, and the essay on the thing. And both of these essays date from later in his thinking, from right around 1950, 50 and 51. They were both originally given as lectures. And I think they're key, crucial pieces, almost as important as The Origin of the Work of Art and On the Essence of Technology, for understanding especially the evolution of Heidegger's later thinking, and also for understanding about it gets into an analysis that begins to seek, because it is in 1950, it begins to seek into the post-war modern world that we've been living in ever since World War II, the consumer world that conquers all distances and creates a shopping mall world out of globalization, where we get this homogenization of culture and the creation of this anti-world that is built up out of what Marc Augé called non-places. Non-places are places that do not have any kind of cultural authenticity, like hotels and shopping malls and gas stations. These places are the same wherever you go. A Holiday Inn in Shanghai, China is the same as one in Memphis, Tennessee. It doesn't matter where you go. So this is creating an inauthentic world, and I think that it's one of the main issues that we're dealing with right now today, this idea of the implications of this global world order and what it's doing to local cultures. And so in this first essay, I want to start with that, building, dwelling, thinking, where he talks about, he wants to know what the essence of building is. What is it to dwell, and then how does building belong to dwelling? So he wants to know the essence. He's very much an essentialist, and he's always after the essence of things. In The Origin of the Work of Art, he wanted to know what the essence of a work of art was. He wanted to know what the essence of truth was in the truth essay. And in technology, he was questioning concerning the essence of technology, which there turned out to be, as we saw, enframing. That is, extracting resources from the earth and storing them up to be held on demand for use at a future date. In this essay, what he wants to know is the significance of building, dwelling. By building, he doesn't mean so much just building in the sense of constructing buildings, although it does include that, but it includes it within the larger sense of dwelling. So he says that to build really is to dwell, where humanity is creating a world for itself on the earth, a dwelling place, and all of the buildings that are created, even the ones that aren't created specifically for humans to dwell in the literal sense, are also nonetheless constitutive of the dwelling, of his modern dwelling on the earth, building a home for himself. So he says that originally, in German, the word bauen, meaning to build, originally came from the Old English word buon, which means to dwell, buon. And it's related to, in German, the word for am, bin, ich bin, I am. Bin, as he says, is also related to bauen, to build, in the sense that building and dwelling are. You are existing, and to exist is to dwell, and to dwell is not just to put a roof over your head, but actually to cultivate, in an agrarian sense, to cultivate your landscape, to take care of your world, to piece it together carefully, and to construct it with care and concern, which is not what we're doing today at all. But that's what he's after. And then he says that what he does after he goes into this the ontological level of building, what it means to build. Building is essentially equivalent to dwelling, and dwelling is the manner in which mortals are on the earth, and building as dwelling unfolds into the building that cultivates growing things. So those are the conclusions that he comes to in the first part of the essay. Then in the middle part, he introduces this interesting idea that I think is very fascinating. He introduces a mandala. And a mandala, as anyone familiar with Jung knows, is a fourfold quadrated image. And mandalas, according to Jung, are produced by the psyche when there's trouble. When the psyche is in danger of fragmentation or disintegration, it spontaneously produces mandalas to harmonize and hold everything together. They're miniature cosmologies, in other words. We think of the great mandalas of Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism generally, which put everything in the world into its place and create an integrum out of the world, a cosmos. And so he comes up with this interesting mandala, this opposition of what he calls sky and earth, and mortals and deities. So he says that all four of these mutually imply one another. He says, for example, that mortals dwell in that they save the earth. They care for it, and they're concerned with it, and so they save the earth, and they receive the sky as sky, and they dwell in their world as a way of serving or awaiting the interests of divinities. And they are themselves, of course, mortals in and of their own nature. So he's got this fourfold aspect that he introduces, which is interesting because it essentially constitutes a miniaturization of the ancient mythical consciousness structure that Jean Gebser had talked about in his book Ever-Present Origin, where he says that you get the magical structure that he says ontologically, or rather cosmologically, it's this point-like unity in which everything is interconnected with everything else like a gigantic web. And he says that the mythical consciousness structure, which came about with the rise of high civilizations in the Bronze Age, is this ring, this circle, in which you get this polaristic opposition between heaven and earth, and between the emergence of the individual soul now in opposition to the collective macro soul, the anima mundi. So Heidegger here, and the image is just very much circular. If you think of the ancient cosmologies, you get the image of the Ouroboros, Okeanos in Homer, that is the world-bounding serpent that personifies the world ocean, inside which the world presences, exists as what it is, a dwelling place for man. So essentially what he's doing is he's miniaturizing Gebser's mythical consciousness structure into his idea of what the authenticity of building and dwelling, and later in the essay on the thing, are. So what he says is that dwelling actually preserves this fourfold relationship between earth and sky, mortals and divinities, by gathering them together and making them immanent in things, by making them concrete, by building them into the world of authentic places. He doesn't use the word authentic, but he means it. The world of authentic places gathers these fourfold together and immanentalizes them, makes them concrete in a specific location. He says, for example, take a bridge, the traditional idea of the bridge that spans the bank. He says it spans the one bank to the next, and in doing so connects earth with earth, and the stream passes through it. So there's the earthly connection, and the stream passes through it, and the earth always implies the heavens because the earth is always open to receive the offerings from the heavens, the rain that floods the river, that flows under the bridge and occasionally around it in a flood. So earth and sky are involved there, and of course the bridge creates a way, a passage for the mortals to cross over it. And the mortals are, of course, at least in the traditional culture, always concerned with realizing the higher world of the deities, the divinities. And so the bridge, in a concrete way, in his analysis here, gathers the fourfold together, sky and earth, mortals and deities, gathers them together and puts them into that place, builds them into this bridge as part of the dwelling world, of dwelling as mortals upon the earth. And in doing so, the bridge creates a location. It presences, but it also creates a location. He says it's not the case that the bridge is just put at any random location, or a location that's already there and then it's just inserted into it. He says the building of the bridge actually creates the location, and it creates that location and it becomes an authentic place, an authentic space. And then he goes on to generalize, and he says he's using the bridge here as a concrete example because he always uses one concrete example. Remember, in the origin of the work of art, he had used the Van Gogh painting as the primary example there, and he always uses this sort of one concrete example. In the next essay on the thing, he'll use the jug as the concrete example. Here it's the bridge, but he means the bridge as a synecdochal metaphor for the construction of dwelling as a whole. So that's what dwelling does in its authentic sense, is it creates locations, spaces within which human beings dwell. And he means to imply by this, though he doesn't say it, he means to imply that this is the opposite of the world that is created by science and globalization, with its distance transcending technologies that bring the far near, and in doing so obsolesce the near. But now we're of course seeking into the next essay, the thing, which that's the opening discussion of that essay. Now, so what he's getting at in this essay is that, you know, the authentic, this world of the near and the authentic is what is being effaced by science, which, because it basically levels everything off so that one place is no more valuable than another place. As a result, it creates this valuelessness, this realm of nihilism, in which nothing really matters, nothing has any meaning, And science, in effect, Heidegger, I think, is saying, just peels meaning away from the world by creating this inauthentic world. So, moving on to the related essay on the thing, he starts off in this essay with the very question of distance versus near. And he says that modern technology, what it's doing in essence, is that it is creating this distanceless world through all these different forms of technology, broadcasting and radio, and then he says, this is 1950, so now he says television is just about to contribute to this process of making the far near and rendering the near far, mixing the two, and therefore essentially effacing the significance of the near. If all things are equally far and near in this new scientific world, this technological world of globalization, then no place really has any better or more interesting meaning than any other place. It's a world of same, of homogenization. And so this is the world now that science is building. And now what he wants to say then is, in asking the question of what is the essence of nearness, what does nearness really mean? What does it mean to be near? He says, let's take a jug. Let's take the jug on the table and look at it. What is it? It's an object that's been made. It's a thing that has these aspects to it. It's got a certain hollowness. It has a handle. It sits on a table. The table rests on the earth. Earth, as in the origin of the work of art, has been set forth into it, and it has contact with this world realm, this surrounding, this aspect of this interreferentiality of worldness that this object is built into, this jug. But he says the problem now is that when you look at this jug from the point of view of science, which is the point of view of objectification, what science wants to do is translate everything into an object that is equally the same, because it's all objective. And so what science does then is it, looking at that jug from the point of view of the world picture presented by science, it simply becomes a hollow volume to be filled by a liquid. It doesn't matter what liquid, and it doesn't matter what shape or what function the vessel has. It's simply this transcendental object X, that exists divorced from a contextual life world that simply is measurable, and it contains measurable quantities. That is not a thing, Heidegger is going to say in this essay. When he's asking about the essence of the near and the essence of the thing, he wants to know what the thingness of a thing is. And what science does is it strips and peels meaning away from the thing in turning it into this objective object, this transcendental X, that no longer has any particular significance to it. And so it's no longer a thing. And so the jug no longer is a thing from the scientific point of view. And he says, if we go back and we look at the jug and we look at it in its authentic aspect as a thing that things, what do we see there? And he says, well, it's a jug into which we pour either wine or water, as the case may be. And the essence of the jug, the jugness of the jug, consists in its outpouring as a giving. We pour out, and the pouring out is a giving forth, and the giving forth is, of course, always a kind of giving thanks. And he doesn't say it, but he has in mind here rituals, and the rituals of daily life as well as other kinds of rituals. But the essence of it is this outpouring, this givingness aspect that it has. Now he says that in this givingness, in this outpouring, which is the jugness of the jug, considered as an authentic thing, the thingness of it as a thing, not as some bland, generic, scientific, transcendental object X with primary qualities like motion and figure, extension and solidity and shape. None of that. It's a thing for which libations are poured, wine, water, and the water that is poured is connected with the earth. The earth is actually still present in the water because the water came from a spring, or the wine has come from grapes that have grown out of the earth. So earth is still present in the pouring forth, in this outpouring, this giving outpouring. So it connects the earth, and of course the earth is always open to the sky, once again, so the earth presupposes the sky and what the sky gives forth. So sky and earth are always involved together in this presencing process that he's talking about here. And then he says that, these drinks are poured for mortals. You pour them out for mortals to quench their thirst. So mortals are involved there. But he says that on those occasions when they are poured forth for gods, then it is gods that is being offered to.